If there's something I'm sad about when it comes to my high school experience, it's the classes that I ran out of age and time, I guess, to take. I wish I would have had maybe one more semester that I was allowed to just take. Me voluntarily extending my time in school. Let me graduate, but let me come back so that I can take 4 more classes that they all had their special circumstances why I didn't get to take them. The first one I remember I wanted to take was AP Bio, but I didn't take it for one specific reason, and that's because the teacher who taught the level behind AP, I was dead ass confused in her class. I don't understand why, but I was struggling in her class. I was struggling with her assignments. And a lot of people were saying that about her. It seemed that the only person who was doing perfectly well in that class was her daughter, who happened to be not my peer from my direct graduating class, but she was like a year younger. But we had another class in common because in high school it is possible for you to be mixed in with underclassmen sometimes when you're an upperclassman. I saw that AP Bio would be taught by her at the only time that I had available, and I thought, I would rather not risk that, because if I had to drop out her class from a slightly lower level, taking the class at this higher level is not going to do me any favors. But maybe since I had the previous course under my belt, I thought, who's to say that I cannot smoothly transition into AP Bio? But I just vividly remembered how difficult her class was because she wasn't very good at explaining. And I remember that my friend at the time was kind of the same way. I'll never forget that the way we started her class was with, how do you determine that something is alive? And I remember that in my group of 4 people, the one input I gave was reproduce. And then my friend actually rejected that. She was like, nah, I don't think so. But then when we were reviewing the things that define what makes something be classified as alive, reproduction came up. And then she was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't think about that. And I'm like, don't worry, I don't feel like this place really breeds knowledge or really lets you focus. In general, we did a pretty good job about other things. We said something about it grows, it has a way of developing, something like that. And then the others, I don't remember what their input was, but I just remember that when it came to the way that this teacher would assign things, I said to myself, I don't know why I do not know what this lady is asking for out of this assignment. I gave myself, I want to say it was 5-6 days before the cutoff time that you have to change any classes that you change your mind on. I think you had 10 days to decide if you were going to commit to that class. After the 10 days, you're stuck with it. And then I said, well, considering how bad it's going for me, I think it's best if I step down. Now, the problem with stepping down meant that I couldn't elect another class that I was very interested in because it happened to be full anyway. That was Computer Applications 2. Computer Apps 2 would have been the class that I want to say fleshed out and polished whatever knowledge I gathered on Computer Apps 1. Computer Apps 1 was excellent. I could feel myself having gratitude for this class because I could feel how I was understanding computers, how I was learning about buttons, how to connect a computer to a printer, things like that. And I said to myself, no matter what job I land in, computers are going to be a part of it. So it's in my best interest to understand a little bit about it. And at my current job, when I used to work cash office, it was an incredibly smooth transition for me, to the point that I had more knowledge on how to use the computer software, the spreadsheet specifically, more than my supervisors at the time. That's when I said, okay, this is the point of hiring young people who are fresh out of school, and they will bring young person fresh out of school knowledge to a place, but the place that you're at needs to learn to appreciate that that's what you bring. And I think that my supervisors at the time were aware and they knew that I was bringing those things. But I think the attitude at the time that these people had is one of, I like to have ultimate control. And if I don't manage with a degree of intimidation, then I'm not going to have control over the department. Something like that. Some people project their authority by being kind of like threatening. And if that's what you have to resort to, that tells me that you don't have a lot of control. And the only way you can control people and have them respect your authority is to intimidate them into submission. I realized right there and then that because I was such a good student anyway, and I pretty much retained almost everything that I was ever taught, that I guess I could be perceived as a threat. And I don't understand what that was about when I made it clear that I wasn't trying to move up or seek promotions. With that said, I'm thinking about, what if I would have gotten computer apps too as a class? As much as I hate computers, but if I would have gained that extra knowledge of word processing and understanding how to format things, how to go further with files and the apps, and learn deeper things about each program, such as Microsoft Works or whatever it's called now, the Microsoft bundle that had Publisher, which I think Publisher was discontinued. Perhaps in the present, an introductory course to the kinds of Microsoft apps that they have now, I think my use of computers would be a more confident one, because my own computer to this day, I still don't really understand how to use all of its features. And I especially hate that now you have the Microsoft Store to go to download things that I feel in the past you inherently had installed or pre-installed on your computer. I guess it's kind of helpful to not need to physically go to a store anymore and be like, okay, I need to buy this program. Now you can just access a store online. It's no different from Apple, iTunes, or the App Store. I just think that at the time that I finished school, because that wasn't the way of things, the way of things was you always had to have the program separately, then had I maybe had a little bit extra time, or have like a semester that I could elect maybe 2 years after I graduated and be like, hey, I want to take a computer class now because there's some stuff coming out that it's helpful for me, then I think I would have fared a whole lot better. But computer apps too, what I was looking forward to the most about it was to get into the database and the spreadsheet in a little more complex manner. Because computer apps 1 ended when it was starting to get a little bit difficult. And I said, there is no way I'm going to learn how to do all of this, apply all these formulas without my guide. But now to think that the skills that I learned are kind of obsolete or on their way to being obsolete is kind of devastating. But at least at work, the spreadsheet we use, it still has the same format as what I remember seeing back in the day, because that format has existed since before I started working that job, which means that it is still resembling very similarly what I would have seen toward the end of my school. So one could say, oh, but you can buy courses at any time and go to your community college and take those computer classes there. Buy them. You should be entitled to a free education as a member of this society, period. Especially if it's something that's going to work for the betterment of the community. Another class I wanted really bad, this was the first one that I was salivating over, and you guys are going to already know why. It's geology. What happened with geology was, despite me grinding so hard at getting people to sign up for this class, I guess in my class there weren't a lot of scientifically driven people, except for maybe like 3 people I can actively think of who were legit serious about science, and one of them wanted to become a neurosurgeon. I keep meaning to look him up to see if he's on social media. He turned out to be our valedictorian too. Nobody wanted to take geology. I was able to recruit one person, and by extension, this person, we had a mutual friend. We recruited that person too, and I want to say one more who we knew from a past class in middle school that we had together, which was, oh, I remember that you liked science. How would you like to take geology? And we were down. It was only like 5 of us now signed up for this class, but we needed to have at least, I want to say it was 10 people. And because we didn't have 10 people, then the school cannot justify occupying the teacher who would be qualified to teach that class if there aren't enough students signed up for it. And that pissed me off so much. I called bullshit on that because there was another class, I don't remember which, but it was an AP class that only had like 4 students, and they let it happen just because they wanted these kids to take the AP exam so they could have AP points, AP credits, college credits. Fuck you. I think it was French actually. I think there was a AP course for French, but French classes went up to level 4 that I can recall. Of course, those don't count as college courses unless it's advanced placement, AP, and then you pay for that exam, and then if you pass it with like a level 3 or 4, or I think it's 4 or 5, then it counts toward your college credit. But anyway, so geology, unfortunately, not enough people signed up for it, and I was salty about that to no end. After that, the class altogether was eliminated. Like, they didn't offer it at all anymore. Another class that I was interested in, but it wasn't urgent, it was journalism. We had a legit journalism course, and then I thought, ooh, I like to write, I like to interview, I like to investigate, I like to ask questions. This sounds like an excellent opportunity for me. But that's a optional one. It wasn't one that I wanted so bad I can taste it. I just liked that it was a choice. It was something available if I was interested in it. I think what turned me off about it was the media element of it. I've never been interested in putting together things in a presentation. And at the time, I would have never ever conceived being on camera. And what a shame, because had I known that I was gonna end up doing this shit and enjoying it, then I would have probably been all over that opportunity. Anyway, that's not one of the 4, but it came to my memory now, so I thought I would mention it. Another class that I wanted super, super, super bad, and this one, it hurts how the opportunity crumbled on me, but I wanted to take Latin. I would have taken something like Italian or Portuguese if my place offered it, but of course that wasn't a thing. And we had an Italian teacher in my middle school. She was actually my homeroom teacher. She taught social studies. She could speak English, Italian, and Mandarin. And I thought, what an interesting blend of languages there, because English is not a Romance language, but she knows it. She also knows a language from the Far East. That was a combination of languages being spoken that I was just never exposed to, not accustomed to. And I remember that on the left side of her board, every day she would have like something written with the Chinese alphabet, and then underneath it had the meaning of it. But unfortunately, none of that stuck to me at all. Latin, the reason I couldn't take that class is because the only teacher who could teach that, she ended up passing away. She had the disease where your cells grow uncontrollably. And she was super, super, super close with my music teacher. My music teacher, I think she is qualified to teach humanities and Latin, but the teacher who passed away was officially the humanities teacher and the Latin teacher. And I'm like, I think I would have turned out a whole lot smarter if I would have taken Latin, because at least with that root language, I feel like transitioning into other languages would have been significantly easier for me, especially French and Italian. I don't know why those are like not so obvious to me as they should be, considering that Spanish was able to stick to me. But Portuguese, for instance, I find that to be a whole lot easier than Italian or French, but it has its little catches too, where I cannot imagine a life in which I could actually spell it and write complete sentences with it. But at least I can get by pretty good listening to it. I was surprised. I randomly clicked on some video that turned out to be in Portuguese, and I want to say I understood about 90 to 93% of it. And the other things I couldn't understand, it was like when words sound like they're meshed together, or it's a word that's legit unique to that language, then it's like, okay, I can't cheat and take the tiny words that I know from other languages to piece this one together. And that's where I think that Latin could have really enabled me to get away with things like that. Humanities was another class that I don't remember was available immediately at the time that I was signing up for classes, or I think it was just a timing problem, meaning that some classes were available for upperclassmen, obviously. It's not like I could skip from Computer Apps 1 to Computer Apps 2 without taking Computer Apps 1. Computer Apps 2, for instance, I missed out on it because I had to take Computer Apps 1, but then shit happened in between, and then that delayed my signing up for Computer Apps 2. And ultimately, I also wanted to take music classes. I ended up in choir when I wanted to do Computer Apps 2, because again, the class was full, but also the other times in the day it was offered, I had like core classes that I couldn't modify in any way. I had to completely give up on Computer Apps 2. But I don't regret that I took choir, because it taught me things in music that I never figured, such as I'm pretty monotone. Thanks to that, I was able to retain what I learned in music much better, to the point that even the way I listen to music changed. I'm grateful for it, because to this day I can actively think about the things that stuck to me from those lessons, and sometimes I'll be getting on YouTube to watch videos on music theory, and I'm like, I remember that shit, I know that shit, I know what that means. Now, when it comes to composing, none of that really stuck to me very well. Like, to this day, I remember the words al coda, for instance, but I don't know exactly what that is. You know, it's still stuff that I have exposure to, so it's not like, oh my God, I'm close to nothing in music. I still remember accidentals and things like that. But yeah, it's just crazy how it worked out. I was sad, devastated, kind of salty to this day about it. But in the end, I don't really regret my high school experience, at least because I missed out on those classes. I guess now with the internet, I have the motivation and could consider going online to see how someone else is teaching those courses. I've been learning more about history from watching videos more than what I learned in class. And this is not to shed on my teachers. My teachers did a hella good job. What my teachers didn't have at the time was the visuals to accompany the lesson. Like, sure, lecturing is a great style to teach me, because at the time at least, I used to gravitate more toward being an auditory learner. And I guess it's because anything that I'm told, I can do pretty good about creating a picture in my mind to follow it. But sometimes, depending on the teacher, depending on the lecturer, the way that they describe things may not have enough spice and seasoning going on for the information to be easily retained and understood in the first place. But at least with YouTube, I can access the same information from different sources, and different sources will deliver it to where if there's something I didn't get from channel A, channel C may be able to teach it to me when it comes to words, but visually, channel B may be the one backing me up better. Well, there you guys have it. That's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. That is my story about the classes that I never got to take and the circumstances that followed it. For Latin, I'll never forget that I wanted to meet that teacher because everyone kept saying that she was awesome, she was great, she was cool, she was super nice. And you could tell too. I walked by her class at the hallway. She would stand there just like every teacher during the class changes, and I would say hi to her. She didn't know me. I didn't know her like that. I knew her by name and subject that she taught, but I would still greet her, and she was just the loveliest person ever. And when we found out that she had passed, it was just super sad. And that happened my freshman year too. It happened, I want to say it was 2-3 months when the school year started. So you can imagine the hole that also created on the schedule. I don't remember what ultimately happened with the class, if people just invented a lesson plan or if they were able to recruit a teacher to fill in or what happened. But I think that we ended up hiring a new teacher because I remember this one teacher who was newer and she was Hispanic. I had never seen her before until months after the Latin teacher events happened. So I think we hired her in her place, but we did that to open up room, I guess, for Spanish classes because Spanish classes were always full. Everybody wanted to take Spanish because it was such an easy class, and everybody kept saying that. I'm like, okay, Spanish is so easy that you motherfuckers are not retaining anything. Why aren't you speaking better Spanish? Why is it that the vocabulary that you learned this week, by the week after next, you will have forgotten about it? Stop saying a class is easy if you're not actually learning and retaining things. That, to me, looks like something that's very hard for you. But then again, my logic be logicking differently. Tell me, what were your classes that you wish you would have taken or that you wish you had more time as a student to indulge in? Anyways, you guys, that's it. Bye.